Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we have a bonus episode, so releasing it here in kind of towards the end of the week, and it's going to be one that actually I was interviewed on the Restless Native podcast with the host Brad Luttrell. So Brad interviewed me, who is also the founder of the Go Wild app, and he interviewed me on the topic of why I started the podcast, how I started it, and a little bit into, outdoor writing, some of my hunting, as well as entrepreneurship and kind of that journey. So this one's a little bit different. We're not going into anything as far as, what you typically would get from the East Meets West, but I really enjoyed Brad's questions and interviews here. It was unique to be able to kind of switch the roles for a little bit and have him interview me, where normally, I'm the one doing the interviews with other people and talking. So that was pretty cool. And so that's what basically just re-releasing this podcast that I did with Brad that he released on the Restless Native. Definitely check out his podcast. It's very good, and he does it so different. I mean, there's a variety of topics, but a lot of business related ones that I find really interesting, as well as hunting, fishing, and a bunch of others. But so before we get into that episode here, I just want to thank our partners through University of Elk Hunting and Elk 101. So Corey Jacobson has created a platform. So if you've ever wanted to plan a do-it-yourself Western elk hunt, or maybe you've been doing it already but are struggling, you're like myself and going on, coming on the fourth year here and haven't killed an elk, and you want to learn more about elk behavior and calling and fitness and gear and everything else, no matter what your level is of elk hunting, you have something that you can learn from his course. So his online course, it's completely online. You can do it from your phone on an app, or you can do it on the computer. It's a full encompassing course to teach you all about elk hunting. So Corey has offered the listeners up a coupon code. East Meets West will save you $20 on an annual membership, which is 20% off. And I've purchased this course for this will be the fourth year now that I bought the course, and it's helped me out a ton and reduce that learning curve when it comes to elk hunting. And also Heather's Choice. Heather has created meals that are a healthy option for going into the backcountry, for traveling. So basically they're dehydrated meals that you can take that aren't full of salt and sugars and carbohydrates. It's a really high protein, high fat type food that tastes extremely good, and I've been using it a lot for traveling. And so when you're going places and you're in airports and everything else, grab a little pack of Packaroons and eat that. Get anywhere between 320 and 400 calories in just two little coconut cookie type and a whole bunch of different flavors. Really like the mint chocolate and some of the other different flavors that she has there. But anyways, they are offering the listeners free shipping on any orders over $99. So if you enter the code East Meets West, you'll get free shipping on those orders. Come directly from Alaska, from their kitchen to your door. And they have some sampler packages if you want to try some things out. If your order isn't going to be over $99, still please use the link on our website. That really helps show the support. And also Maven Optics. So Maven has taken a business model that they're direct to consumer, so they're not selling anywhere besides online or at shows. And what they're able to do with that is able to come out with an extremely high quality product going head to head with the big dogs, the Swarovski, Zeiss, Leica, and have that premium high quality Japanese glass, American components, and be able to put them out at a lower price point because of not having that middleman markup. And so Maven has offered a free gift with any full price optics order. So if you enter the code EastMeetsWest-gift, then you will get a free gift, which changes pretty frequently on a monthly basis. But you'll get that with the order. So check out Maven Optics if you want to see some sample things. I've taken some videos in low light to show the differences. Feel free to shoot me a message or an email, and I'll send that to you. And if you have any questions on them, let me know. So with that being said, a couple other news points here I want to cover. So I did release two new hats, actually. They're the Stealth Trucker hats and regular multicam, as well as black multicam. Really cool hats, designed over at the people over at Bighorn Designs in Wyoming created these hats for me, and they are awesome. I'm really pumped about them, and they're the ones that do all the apparel for Maven, actually, which if you checked out Maven stuff before, their apparel is top notch, and Bighorn Designs is a big reason behind that. So check those out. The new Stealth Trucker hats are for sale and shipping now on the website. I also wanted to give a little update on the Mountain Buck shirt. So it's something I did a pre-order about 3 weeks ago. I started that, and what happened with these shirts? So they were a hit. I mean, a lot of people liked them and put in some pre-orders, and I was having a little bit of problems from the manufacturer that was making them, as far as they kept pushing out the lead time and everything else. I was kind of getting frustrated, and they finally got them to me, and they just did not turn out to my expectations. I mean, there were some issues with them that I just was not going to be satisfied with and would never send out to anybody. So I called the manufacturer, tried to working it out with them, and they weren't real good on helping with from a customer service standpoint. So I ended up refunding me all my money, and I switched it over to Bighorn Designs because I know that they're going to produce extremely high quality stuff, no issues, no blemishes. So they do a quality check on all their stuff before it goes out the door. So those are now on their way back. Should have them here and shipped out in a couple weeks. So I apologize to everyone for the delay, and the people that ordered responded back to me and were super awesome about it, and I really appreciate that. And they're like, yeah, no problem. It's not like we're going to prom. We don't need them, right now. So that was awesome to be able to have, the customers that I do here. And if you do want to go over and check them out on the website, the design is up. It's a pretty cool design, and 3% of those sales are going to the QDMA. And also all of the other apparel items I have, 3% of that goes to backcountry hunters and anglers. So pretty cool. And for the final news, and I'll get right into this podcast here before I keep talking, is this weekend. So it'll be March 31st. If you happen to be in north central Pennsylvania area, come over to the Dam Inn in Wilcox, PA. I am co-hosting a pint night with backcountry hunters and anglers, selling some apparel, talking public lands, talking whitetails, talking elk hunting, it's going to be a great event. Having some beers, some food, and just, meeting with some like-minded people. So if you guys can make that's from 6 to 8 p.m. this Sunday at the Dam Inn in Wilcox, Pennsylvania. So I hope to see a bunch of people. I think it's going to be a really good turnout. Excited for that. So, all right, without further ado, let's get into this one. And like I said, this was a re-release from the Restless native and Brad Luttrell. Enjoy.
Restless Native is brought to you by Go Wild. Go Wild is an activity tracking platform for outdoors enthusiasts. You can share your story, track your hunts, your hikes, your fishing trips, all that on the Go Wild app. Go Wild recently partnered with NWTF. Of course, that is the National Wild Turkey Federation. And we're extremely proud and excited of this partnership. And one thing I wanted to tell you about in today's ad is there is a free turkey hunt on the line. All you have to do is have the Go Wild app, search NWTF. You can get entered right there by taking the pledge to take someone hunting or fishing for the first time this year. You also need to be an NWTF member, which really, why are you not already a member if you're not? This is a great organization. They're making great strides for conservation. I hope you all would check it out and consider joining NWTF and join the pledge. Take the pledge today to take somebody out for the first time this year. Thank you to the team at Go Wild for making this podcast possible. I get a lot of questions about how to start a podcast. Today, we have answers. This show is a podcast with a guy who started a podcast. Over the last few weeks, we've heard from some pretty large brands like Garmin and First Light. We heard about these stories years down the road from when that first person, the founder, took that leap of faith and said, I want to do this. Now, all great companies at some point had someone who said, I believe. They made that jump. Today, we're going to hear from someone who is in that pivotal moment of trying to figure out when to jump. Like right now. He's trying to figure this out right now. We'll actually start to talk about that, like when to do that and some, not, I don't want to say coaching, but like just hacking through it, like thinking through the model of running a podcast and how it's going to be successful. You're going to hear that in real time on this show. We get to hear about what it takes to build a brand and just how do you start that outdoors podcast journey. I'm really excited about this one. Bo is an incredibly nice guy. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this show. I look forward to seeing your feedback when you log this podcast on Go Wild. I'm the host, Brad Luttrell, and this is Restless Native with writer, podcaster, and hunter, Bo Martonic. Bo, welcome to Restless Native.
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. I'm not going to lie, man. The first, 3 or 4 times I saw you pop up in my Instagram feed, I thought you were Cody Rich because of that mustache.
That's funny. I've been called a whole bunch of things from Cody Rich to Ryan Callahan to, a straight creep. But either way, yeah, that's really funny. It's recognizable, that's for sure.
Well, you've kind of owned the mustache in a different way. Like you've branded it, right? Like it's like this is part of your thing now, right?
Yeah. It's I call it the rut stash. So it started as a joke where for every archery season I would grow out a mustache and I said this is my rut stash. It brought me good luck. And then I just started growing the rut stash in March of last year and just kind of for fun and started East Meets West at the same time, and it kind of became a part of the brand. And I realized that, and everyone's like, oh, I love the rut stash and this and that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a t-shirt out of this and a hashtag, and it turned into a whole ordeal of different things. I had a rut stash challenge and stuff where I raised money for backcountry hunters and anglers based on people growing out their mustache and making their significant others upset. But either way, it's been a part of it.
So say, man, my wife cries every time I grow out a mustache. Not like I never grow out just a mustache. It's usually I have a beard and then I will shave said beard and leave behind a mustache, and my wife will just look at me and she's like, no, get back.
Get back in the bathroom.
Yeah, this year I actually did rock a mustache for 2 days because of Halloween. We were getting ready to go to a Halloween party, and we got 2 kids, so we don't exactly think through like our own Halloween costumes. And last minute, I don't even remember what she wore. I pulled out. I think she wore a pumpkin sweater that she just had. And I was like, no, I'm going all out. So I, in 30 minutes, pulled together, like 30 minutes before we went out the door, I pulled together a costume, which I dubbed Your Dad. And I wore like really short jean shorts, a high school. I for some reason have one of my dad's high school shirts from his high school. It's super skinny, like those real high sleeves they had in the 80s, and it had like these 80s graphics on it. And then I wore a Kentucky basketball hat that I've had my whole life, and it's like a trucker hat, but it's a soft foam. It's not like the cool Richardsons that we have now, and it looks ridiculous. I had some blue blockers that I found, and I had like high socks on with, I don't remember what kind of shoes, but then
Please tell me white sneakers.
Yeah, I think they were white shoes. I had, if I remember correctly. No, what? I looked for those. I couldn't find any white sneakers. I used to have some, but I ended up wearing socks with sandals because it's like your dad. And not that was necessarily an 80s thing. I was just like, okay, we're going dad mode here. And then I carried around I have a camera collection, so I grabbed like one of my Polaroids from the 80s, and then I made out of some poster board we had, a Polaroid frame and wore it around my neck, and it said "Your Dad, 1987." And I actually in 30 and then I shaved off my beard and left the mustache. And in my 30-minute costume, it was good enough to win the costume contest at that party. So I won a bottle of bourbon for my 30 minutes of effort.
That's hilarious. That's pretty cool that you're able to pull that together in that short amount of time, you know.
I was pretty proud of it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think I posted it on my Go Wild account. If anybody wants to dig through back to Halloween and find my my Halloween costume. All right, man. It's funny with podcasts. I just told you a second ago. I'm like, I don't want to overscript these to let it go where it naturally goes. And there's always a place that it goes to like really early for me that I didn't see it going, and that's it. I did not anticipate telling you about my Halloween costume.
Hey, I love that kind of. That's what I do with my podcast too. Sometimes I go down some rabbit holes, and it's good,
dude.
If
you overstructure them, it's almost like listening to an educational tape. Like nobody signs up for that with these things.
No.
Hey, man, so I do want to, like, before we get too deep into the rabbit hole, though, I want to back up and talk about, like, okay, we know you just mentioned you got a podcast and a brand that you're working on. I was seeing this around. You're doing a really great job, your branding, first of all. I actually thought you had been around for much, like, your branding was so consistent and good, and I'm a branding guy, so I recognize this and think about it. Probably overanalyze a little bit more than most people probably do. But I kept seeing it pop up, and I was like, this is one of those really big podcasts that I probably should be embarrassed about for not knowing, thinking it was like a gritty that had been around for a long time. And then you haven't been doing it for like that long once I dug into it, but it's also like you're landing some really big guests. So I want to hear about like the show itself in a second, but you told me an interesting story about your journey to becoming a podcaster in the hunting space. Can you kind of go through that again and tell people like your background and how you got into this?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for saying that. But I've only been in the whole podcast game now. I think the first episode dropped on July 1st of 2018, so it's still relatively new. But so I'll get into the story here, and if I'm going too long, Brad, tell me to cut it short. But it all started back in, I think it was around 2016. It might have been 2015. I just got into hearing about podcasts and listened to a couple of them. Beyond the Kill with Adam Yonke was one of the first ones, and then I think the Gritty Bowman at the time was coming out, and really dug into it and liked it. I'm like, you know what? It's awesome to be able to fill your mind with something other than song lyrics that don't really do you any good. I can actually learn information from this when I'm driving or working out or whatever it may be. So anyways, the podcast world kind of got me into Western hunting, and that, along with a couple of books that I read, got me into going out west for the first time. And when I did that, it was an experience that kind of changed my whole view with hunting and kind of where I wanted to go with it. And it was a do-it-yourself 7-day backpack hunt in Colorado for elk, and I was unsuccessful from a standpoint of filling a tag, but the experiences I had from just being, one, plain miserable during part of it, and two, just the lessons learned from that trip had it. I don't know. It inspired me to write a story on it, and I was not a writer. I had not written since college, and just wrote this story about my first elk hunt, and I titled it East Meets West, submitted it to an online publication, the journal Mountain Hunting, which is Adam Yonkey's podcast, Beyond the Kill. It's his writing side, and he decided to run it as a subscriber story. And from that, I got a lot of feedback from people, wanting to know about it and be like, how did someone, from the East go on this trip? Do you have a lot of money? How'd you make that happen? And what I realized was there was a giant gap in information for people from the East Coast learning how to, I guess, plan these type of hunts, and just thought it was for the rich and the people that were on outdoor television on these big ranches. And so I started doing some more writing on that side of things. Adam, I don't know what he saw in me, but he decided to bring me on as a field editor to give some Eastern perspective to it. And I started writing more, and that kind of snowballed into writing for a couple magazines, including like Peterson's Bow Hunting and some other online publications, all about going west. And I like I said, I had been a big fan of podcasts, and really realized that I was getting a lot of information from them, but I was having to dig really deep, and there was a gap between starting out and already having a background on the topic. So there's a lot of great Western hunting podcasts, including like Gritty and some of the and Cody Rich's podcast and everything. But I felt like it was hard to connect with them from an Eastern perspective, just because they grew up in the West. So I came up with this idea. I'm like, I want to do my own podcast to help people find adventure through hunting in places from East to West. But I was afraid to do it, to be completely honest. And so in the meantime, I was doing dabbling in some photography, and just kind of putting stuff up on Instagram and everything. And finally last year, it was right before the ATA show, I said, I'm going to do that this year. I'm going to start a podcast. And so I went through about a 4-month process of overanalyzing everything with it, and coming down to the stuff to use, the gear, the business plan, all this stuff. I just completely blew it out of the water for what it needed to be. But what that did was, it came around the May time frame, and a friend of mine who works for the Total Archery Challenge in Pennsylvania called me. He's like, hey man, like, I heard about what you're trying to do here. I can get you in. We have an open booth space if you want it. Can you get all your equipment together and start podcasting in 3 weeks? And I'm like, geez. Well, that lit a fire kind of under my ass to get going, and I got all the equipment. I made it happen and started recording there. So that was a very long-winded way of saying it, but that's kind of my journey into starting East Meets West, and really just wanting to help people, again, find adventure as I did, is because it was so life-changing for me.
Well, dude, you hit one thing that you said really stood out to me. It was the part where you said that you found the gap between beginner and like where everybody else strikes, just already moving to be extreme. And I'm like that with fishing now too. I have a hard time reading or even understanding some of the fishing content that's out there, because people that like eat, breathe, sleep this fishing, and no matter what type of fishing it is, it doesn't matter if it's bass fishing, cat fishing, deep sea, any of it, there's a certain amount of knowledge that I just don't have, and a lot of that I haven't been able to hang with. And I've been fishing my whole life. Like I've just never been like my business partner John Hunter fishes the FLW, and he can talk about fishing and sound to me as smart as my co-founder Zach, who's a data scientist. Like they both like they are so far above what my comprehension level is. And when I started Go Wild, I had a little bit of that with deer hunting because I realized that I'd been hunting with the guy, and when it came clear I wasn't going to be hunting with him this season, I'm like, all right, whatever. I know how to hunt. I'll go out and deer hunt by myself. And I'd done 2 seasons with him, so I thought I knew what I was doing. But I actually found out I was just deer hunting with a good deer hunter. It didn't mean I was a good deer hunter. So I started researching, and I got totally skunked my first hardest I'd ever hunted, and I got skunked. I did see one deer, a doe, which you can't shoot in that zone, running away from me blowing. And it's like I had no idea what I was doing. And when I started researching that, I'm like, I don't even know the right things to ask to learn. Like there's a certain point where like you know things that you don't know, but it's the unknown unknowns that are really scary in that scenario. Or not scary, but like that's the intimidating part is like I don't even know what questions to ask to learn to be better. Like I don't know what I'm doing wrong because I don't know anything. I kind of went through that on whitetail hunting. I had hunted small game and like I said, fished on and off my whole life, but like whitetail, and I'd been around whitetail hunting. I just didn't know how to like doing it on my own, knowing how to track and knowing what was a good spots and like understanding how to work the wind from a tree stand and like planning for that. I didn't know how to do any of this. And it was, so when you're talking about like how overwhelming that felt, I can totally identify with that. I've been through that, and I again still live that with the fishing side of things.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, like when I planned that first trip out west, I drove myself nuts trying to figure it out. Like I didn't know that you need the special backpacks to haul meat out. I didn't know how to do any of that. I was from Pennsylvania. I had no exposure to it, and the only thing that I ever seen from a Western hunting side of things was the primo shows on the Outdoor Channel that weren't realistic to what I was about to do. And it took a long time for me to get comfortable with it, and I still just kind of winged it from now looking back. And I wanted to shorten that learning curve for people and make it so that I'm just stubborn, and if I want to learn something, I will. Where it might be a little overwhelming for other people, and they may never do it. And I just want to create that resource where people want to do that. And to add to that, if they don't say they can't go out west because of maybe they just had a baby, or they just got married, or financial's not exactly right, well, I wanted to identify that there's places in the east too that you can do that. The Appalachian Mountain region, that runs the whole way up the East Coast, and everything is a gold mine for places to go and have that Western type hunt, but just for deer or turkey, bear, whatever it might be. But you can create your own adventure there too. That might be 2.5, 3 hours from your home that you could do in a long weekend, rather than putting aside 10 to 14 days to travel across the country. So that's kind of the avenue that I took with it.
Yeah, man, people forget about bear hunting in the east, and we've got some massive bears down in the southeast, North Carolina area. I think it's North Carolina, in the Carolinas. I mean, these big, like massive 600-pound bears. There was even in Virginia, close to where my parents are. It was like just over the mountain in Kentucky, or from where they are in Kentucky. Maybe an hour away, somebody hit a black bear that they were estimating was almost 700 pounds. And you hunt those in the fall. That's where a lot of people are gonna be like, turn their nose up at it. It's not like a spring bear hunt out west, but you're still, a lot of these areas, it's still gonna be a lot of glassing. It's still gonna be a lot of you would be able to move around. You could definitely treat it similar to a Western hunt in some regards. The problem with where I hunt, and I think it's probably similar for you up where you are, is like it's so noisy. People out west don't understand our woes in the fall of like you can't move. Like you're so grounded because of the leaves. Like there's so freaking many. Like anything. I mean, like unless it's raining and the leaves are wet, you cannot move in silence or even like relative quietness in the woods unless you're a black bear or a deer. It's like
yeah, no, exactly. If you're a squirrel, you're louder than everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like that gets overlooked. I've had some people say like, well, why don't you guys have some areas that are more mountainous. Why don't you try the Western style of hunting? I'm like, we don't do that here because it doesn't work. I mean, you're not sneaking up on a buck, especially with a bow. I mean, you're definitely not sneaking up on anything with a bow. At least where I hunt back home. Now here where I'm on western, no, I'm not Western Kentucky. I'm Central Kentucky, but west of where I hunt in the Appalachian Mountains is, it's here. It's totally different. It's farmland. You could try some of that, I guess. I've had moments where I pop up over a little knoll and there's some deer standing there looking at me or some coyotes or whatever. I think there's opportunities for some of that, but you're also on farmland now, and it's not the Western experience.
No, yeah, and I mean, but there's also like you can look at it from the side of, maybe you're not doing spot and stock or glassing, for animals. Like a lot of the areas where I'm at is super thick and you can't glass. But what you can do is, pack back in pretty far. And in a lot of areas, you're allowed to camp. So you can still set up a camp like you would be backpack hunting and then still get in your tree stand or whatever it might be. And so it's kind of a mixture there of things. And it's funny what you were saying about the size of bears. Actually, in Pennsylvania this past year, I think we had 3 of them that were killed that went over 800 pounds.
Woo. Massive, man.
And I don't quote me on that. It might have been over 700, but I'm pretty sure at least they were huge. They were stupid big. So
now, do you guys have the crazy amount of bears that are popping up everywhere in the Northeast? Like, do you have this huge influx that's popped up over the last decade?
Not really any more than we've had in the past. We've always had a lot of bears, but where I'm at is kind of in the middle of nowhere, so you don't see them as much still. It's just a lot of thick timber, and they show up on my cameras all the time, but I rarely see them when I'm in the woods.
I know. I can't remember what state it was. I know New Jersey has like the most dense black bear population in the country, and then there's another couple states up there that they're just exploding, and it's probably from lack of hunting. I mean, there's no pressure. You need that predator management when it gets into some of these densely populated areas. But all right, so I wanted to ask you, how many shows did you do that first your first trip out to what was Total Archery Challenge? How many people did you interview?
13.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Oh, you got after it, man.
Oh, I did, and the scary part is I had not recorded any before besides practicing myself, so I was hoping that they turned out great, and luckily they did. I mean, I had a few things that I had to adjust afterwards, but they weren't like terrible quality or anything. The first one I did was with Gritty and Jordan Harbertson from MTN OPS, and Brian was a huge help with me. He's the one who helped me pick out my equipment and showed me, what audio levels to run it at, so I wasn't picking up a ton of background noise. So I had some help there. But yeah, I had 13 guests in that one weekend.
Whew, I thought you'd be like 5, or 5 to me would be a lot. People, when I go to trade shows, a lot of times people are like, "Hey, you gonna record? You gonna do some podcasts?" And I want to, but it's also like it's hard for me to get out of the trade show what I need to get out of it. And it's also like you kind of said, the background noise and everything's problematic. So there's a lot of controls that you have to try to have within that scenario. So I've not done it really. I'm going down to National Wild Turkey here in 2 days. I'm going down and I'm going to interview Becky, the CEO of the National Wild Turkey Federation, and that'll be cool. I think we're going to get off to a side room, and I might end up, if I meet somebody that it's cool, I'm like, hey man, let's sit down for a podcast. But for the most part, I haven't really tried to do that, so because it's hard. Like I'm saying that because it's hard to do. So good job. I'm impressed.
Well, yeah, other shows though, I've kind of avoided it for the most part. Like recently, like ones where I'm indoors, ATA show, I did a couple, but for the most part, I've just maybe scheduled them there because it's too tough, like you said, to get what you need out of the show and still sit down and record some.
Yeah, and even though you're in person, like in theory, you should have good audio because you're in person, right? That's always your best scenario for audio, is because you have controls. But those trade shows, I mean, when I was talking to you at ATA, we were at the Garmin booth right over there by, I guess it was a predator calling booth that was on the other side of that curtain, because about every 8 minutes there was a coyote howl, another 8 minutes and it's a turkey gobble, and then another 8 minutes and it's like a elk calling. And, that stuff's distracting. You're both trying to create quality content. Nobody wants that stuff happening in the background, even if it is clear that you're at a trade show. There's a certain level of background noise that's acceptable, and that environment typically is not it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, that's it. And like you said, National Wild Turkey Federation is probably the most difficult one because it's nothing but people blowing on turkey calls.
I've never been to that show, but I do anticipate that being a challenge. But I have, this is the loosest schedule I've had in for anything that we've been doing. Actually, ATA was pretty open, but we were also we were rolling out that new product, and we were getting a lot of questions rolling into it. And I'm like, I need to be in the booth to talk about this, meeting the media members that are coming through. So I didn't want to leave the booth. I probably had time to schedule some stuff, but I didn't want to because I felt like I said, I needed to get out what I came for. But we've got a pretty loose schedule on Thursday and Friday, so I'm thinking if I get a chance and there is a quiet space, which if there's not, then I won't be recording anything else. But we'll see. I might record something, but I'm kind of excited about this show because I hear it's a fun one to just wander. It's a more consumer facing show, so that part will be fun. I'm pumped. Have you been? It sounds like you've been to it.
No, actually, I just have heard from friends that have went there about how loud it is, and that there's a lot of people, hitting the turkey calls and everything else. So.
I imagine that to be true. All right, so what do you like from your show? I obviously think you've done a great job pulling the branding together, but I'm curious what you think you've done a good job. Like, what interviews have you been the most proud of from your podcast? Which ones come to mind?
So the first one that I did with Jordan and Brian was really cool because it actually kind of turned around where Brian, is a podcaster with the Gritty podcast, and he, was almost interviewing me from some of it and really kind of helped get out, what I was doing with the podcast. And we went on a whole different side of things that wasn't hunting related. There was a little bit that tied into hunting, but it was more life lessons and things along those lines. And it's been a really popular podcast and one that I had really fun recording. So that was one of them that, sticks out to me. And from the other side of it, it was another guest that I had on was John Barklow. He's the big game product manager for Sitka Gear. And I've had him on twice now, but when I first got to talk to him about building performance apparel systems, him and I have geeked out on these things for a few years since I met him in ATA like 3 years ago. I worked for an archery shop and used to be a Sitka dealer, so I was the quote-unquote Sitka specialist there for helping customers out and build their systems for their dream hunts. And so I'd always bounce questions off John. And once I finally got this platform where I could interview him and I could just sit there and geek out on it, that was a lot of fun. And that was a really fun podcast to be able to do.
You've got some big names on here, though. Aaron Snyder, Corey Jacobson. Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah, yep, Jacobson. I've had Tim Burnett from Solo Hunter on there. Jason Matzinger most recently at the ATA show. And so I've definitely had some really cool guests on there. And then also a lot of people that are, relatively unheard of that just bring some amazing information and experience to the table. So I like to kind of mix it between, some of the big mainstream guys and then the people that are, the down to earth, just, backwoods type guys that no one's heard of before.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
I mean, honestly, man, the big mainstream guys are only going to help you with your audience if they're going to promote it. Like if they're not going to go tell anybody, you're still sitting there trying to tell the same people you were telling before. You might get a couple more people interested because it was a big name. But the flip side of that is, like, how many times have people heard Aaron Snyder on a podcast? There's also that challenge of, like, they're everywhere, And so therefore, like, why would your show stand out? So strategically, at first it can seem like, oh, I should chase these big name guys. If I get just one of these guys on, I'm going to be able to double my listeners, when you're early. And if I can just get one of them, I'll be able to, expand my podcast growth by 20% or whatever your goals are. You think that it's going to happen that way, and it doesn't necessarily happen that way. Like it actually, it's just a slow, grinded out process. No matter, I actually have found that I've said this quite a bit lately. People are probably tired of hearing me saying it because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I just think this is the nature of podcast. I have found that most of the time, not every time, there's certainly scenarios in which like I interview a Hannah Barron and it blows up because it's Hannah Barron. But like most people that don't have, 500,000 followers, and even if it's like the 50 to 150 range, like they're going to do whatever all the other shows are doing. You'll see some variety. You'll see some that are, substantially better, but sometimes the ones that are substantially better surprise me. Like when I started realizing that, hey, every time I have one of my co-founders on, that's one of our best shows for the month. And I thought it was kind of a fluke at first, but consistently every time we do a Team Go Wild podcast, I even released one as like a bonus show and said, do not listen to this episode, which actually maybe that was a great marketing tactic because people are like, oh, what's this about? But even like John Hunter, having John on, which John's like, John's a professional angler. So he's got a little bit more notoriety about him, but the rest of us are like, I'm a creative guy. I have a developer who has been on, I just today released a podcast with my co-founder Zach, who is a data scientist. Like these are not people that draw big groups in the outdoor space, yet with our audience, there's something about that Go Wild network that people want to listen to that. So those guys have done really well, beating out. I'm not gonna I don't want to drop names on who didn't perform like I thought they would do, but they've beat out some people that you would have said there's no way that would happen.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. I've really noticed that myself, and and again, I'm not going to name drop anybody, but there's been people that have been awesome guests, great show, big names, and then they don't promote it like they said they would, and it doesn't go any higher than any other one. And
Yep.
then I've had people. I had a buddy of mine recently that I just met hunting up here in northern Pennsylvania, and he's an amazing whitetail hunter. The guy just knows stuff publicly and just traveled to the U.S. And anyways, I interviewed him recently. It was the longest episode I ever did. It was just him and I, kind of rambling about it, and it was one of my most downloaded episodes, and it was pretty cool to be able to see that, and I've really been paying attention to kind of see how that goes. Where on the flip side, at the beginning when I put Aaron Snyder on there and he shared it on his Instagram, it probably did double my following in a very short amount of time. But
yeah, for sure, man. There's like it does depend on like you almost wish you could know. Some of these people, you wish you could know, like, are they going to promote it? Because sometimes the coordination and then the fact that they have been on so much other content, you have to weigh that stuff. It's, sometimes it's better to find that unknown person, and if people find that you're providing value with those unknown people and things that are interesting, I think that at the end of the day, that's what matters the most. Is if I have a podcast that I know is contributing content that is typically quality, I'm going to listen no matter who the guest is. So I think that's it more than anything. I went through a stretch where I experimented with my show is a little bit different. I talk about the business side and the marketing and like growing hunting brands and like people that are working really hard in the outdoors industry. And I'm not trying to tell as much hunting. We tell hunting stories. Well, like I've got some where it's like really hunting heavy and then some where it's not. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to do some marketing heavy ones, because I had a show where people started asking me about influencers, and I decided to like really dig into that. So I brought on a super knowledgeable guy named Josh Claflin, who is he runs a digital ad agency, and he's one of the most knowledgeable people about how influencer marketing works that I've ever spoken to. And we like got into the nitty gritty. We didn't talk about the outdoors until we got to the last like 15 minutes of that show. So people, I did a couple like that. I had AJ DeRosa on from Project Upland. And I thought, honestly, we'd talk more marketing with him, but we ended up talking a lot about R3 efforts. And then I had another digital marketer on. So I did like 3 of these almost back to back, just out of curiosity on how they would do. And I mean, it didn't drop off any. It wasn't explosive, but I did find some interesting, feedback from my guests from shaking it up. And some people really loved it. You either really loved it or you really were just like, whatever. It was like a lot of people were like, I'd rather hear the hunting stories.
Yeah, no, I get you there. And I actually listened to the one recently. What was the first guest that you had said there that you guys really dived into influencer marketing?
Josh Claflin.
Yeah, that was a very good one. And I actually have it in my phone to listen to it again and go through it.
That's good to hear, man. I think if you, no matter what you're doing, if it's podcast or running a blog or what influencer marketing in terms of an Instagram account or whatever, like that podcast alone really lines out how you need to be thinking of your content. And I learned a lot from him, and I want to get him. I might end up doing another. He might be at POMA this summer, so I might sit back down with him and chat some more. But I knew I wanted to have him on because his presentation was very, very solid, but also not like I've seen a lot of social media. Like, this is what social media marketing is, and this is how we do it. And it's, I was in advertising for 7 years, and there's just so much of that crap out there. So his was very different. And anytime you hear somebody talking about things in a different way, it's like, okay, this guy's a thought leader. So I knew he was going to be a great interview. What I didn't know, I knew he was very smart and would be articulate. What I didn't know was how my audience would respond. But it was like I said, there were a lot of people that were like, holy crap, I had no idea. And I've had a lot of people tell me, like you said, they're going to listen to it again. Speaking of growing as an influencer, you've had, so we just talked about how you've had these huge celebrity type people on, and I don't like calling hunters celebrities, but you kind of get to a point to where like the industry knows Aaron Snyder, the industry knows Brian Call. So like, where you've also interviewed these lesser known people, where do you see, what's your 1 year, 5 year plan for what you're doing right now with East Meets West?
Yeah, so as far as the guests go, or just kind of how I see the topics going?
The brand, and like you do a combination of writing and podcasting, and like, what do you see East Meets West as a brand? Maybe you're like, I want to start my own news website. Like, I have no idea what you might want. Like, I'm more interested in like the high level. When I do my 5-year follow-up with you, what would you be into then, and then like what's in the shorter term plan for you?
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept for me, and I kind of go back and forth with this a lot in my own head, and where it's exactly going. But like, my 5-year plan is to, and again, I do not have this figured out whatsoever, but I want to figure out a way to make it tangible where I can really see that I'm helping people find that adventure and going out west. Maybe that's some sort of resource that I'm providing where I'm actually, taking people out there, or if I'm, creating something that I'm helping them actually plan it, like specifically for, each person to plan these different hunts. So that's kind of like when I'm looking out at my stretch goal, my 5-year plan, I want to do something bigger where I feel like I'm truly helping these people out, and not kind of guessing or assuming that I am. I mean, you get messages saying that it's helped them out a lot and they're planning on doing this, or they did go out west from it. But I want to do something where I feel like I'm really, truly helping people out with it. And with that being said, in the 1-year plan, I want to continue to inspire people through the podcast and do that from the adventure side of things. But in the same mindset, I want to really get into the how to do this and break it down even more and break down the steps. Like, so when I started the podcast, I had a lot of people coming on talking about like, you got to go out west, or you got to go here, you've got to do this in your life. But it was really general. And I really want to start focusing in on topic-based episodes that people can listen to and be like, wow, I got a really good takeaway from that. Not just from an entertaining standpoint. I still want to entertain, obviously, but I want to have something they can really get takeaways from. And with that, I want to get better with my blog. So I do a lot of freelance writing for other, people and stuff, but I'm slow moving on my own blog and getting content up there, regularly. And I've kind of put the podcast first and trying to do the writing thing, behind it. And I can make a bunch of excuses on why that hasn't got to the point where I want it to be, but in reality, it comes down to my time and how I'm, allocating that and justifying, what's the most important and, rating it based on that. But I really want to help out more with that standpoint. So from as far as that goes, that's what I'm looking to do. Maybe some more content around. Last year I did a day-by-day hunt update from Colorado. I carried my equipment with me for 14 days and did a podcast every night, really talking about the experience and the emotions right after you're done with the day. And I want to do some more stuff like that, and I guess that's what I'm looking to do. And then also I started an apparel side of the business as well. And so I designed my logo myself. I kind of taught myself how to use Adobe Illustrator and do that, which I realized that, yes, I have been able to do that, but for the amount of time that I'm putting into trying to figure this out for how little I do it, I'm going to start, utilizing other people that, do this for a living to help me with it and better, again, allocate my time and get some more stuff on the apparel things out, just lifestyle type apparel for East Meets West, and that's kind of what I'm looking to do with it going forward here, and where I see the brand and the business going.
It's a great answer. So I'm curious because right now you're working full time and this is on the side, right? Like this isn't your full time gig.
Yeah, that's correct.
So do you see a future that like you might take this eventually? Like, could it be enough to where this is your full time gig, like 5 years down the road?
Yes, I do, and that's a very good point. That is my goal. Do I know exactly how that's going to be? I mean, I understand from the standpoint of, some people do it from an advertising standpoint and an affiliate marketing standpoint only. And as I started kind of going down that road a little bit, I've realized that I don't think that's the route I want to take. There's, certain companies I love working with and would definitely want to do that. But I feel like if it comes to a point where that's all you're relying on, you're going to end up taking different shortcuts or taking money from companies that you may not truly believe in. And I've realized my audience really appreciates I just kind of say it how I think, and I want to make sure I keep that relationship with them, because obviously they're the ones that are creating this lifestyle for me, and if I let them down by becoming someone I'm not, then I don't want that. So I'm kind of looking at different avenues and have a bunch of ideas in my head that haven't turned into a full business plan or anything yet, but I've got some things in my mind that I can see. I don't see me, let's put it this way, I do not see myself working full-time as an environmental and safety engineer in the long term. I just can't, and I won't let that happen.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. I'll tell you, like, the best thing I ever did was sit down and actually write a business plan. And I always advocate for this. I get a lot of people asking me for advice on starting a company since Go Wild, since we launched this. And, they know that I started this on the side, and I was working nights and weekends. And it's like, how did you do this? And the first thing that so many people overlook is a business plan. You can find a free template online, SCORE, like it's an acronym, SCORE. Look it up, business template, and it will force you to think about not only like how does this thing make money, but who are my competitors? What do they do better than I do? What do I do better than them? And walking through that exercise, that alone will help you realize how to monetize this thing. I do think you make an interesting point. I see a lot of, and Josh and I talked about this on his episode, of a lot of people think they want to be an influencer. They think they want that brand money. And I've met a lot of people who could take the brand money and they turn it down because they don't want to be tethered to a company. And, companies have to be careful with who they align with from a brand ambassador point, but so do brand ambassadors. You don't want to be attached to a company that whose product you don't believe in, because then, you could run an ad that's a read that is like, this is what the product does, which is how you would probably handle that scenario. But what happens when people ask you about this when you're on somebody else's show? How are you going to handle that? Are you going to say, oh yes, they pay me, $10,000 a year to talk about their XYZ, whatever this thing is, their widgets? Or are you going to be able to say, like, I truly love this product and this is why it's great? I think everybody assumes that, like, when you think about influencers, it's like, oh, they just had their pick of the litters and they, probably have nothing but products that they love to work with. And it's to the point now, like, do you know how many people have 10,000 followers or 20,000, 30,000? Like, it is a dime a dozen on the influencers for brands to pick from. And Cody, I can say this from Cody Rich. He actually said this on Garrett Weaver's podcast the other day. He's like, I don't need to pay influencers anymore because that we have so many people that'll use our product for free for trade that I can get a high volume of smaller influencers and give them product versus paying one big one. And I think, there's going to be a bubble that bursts on some of these giant paychecks for influencers at a certain point when brands start to realize that, hey, these celebrities don't really convert any sales. They're good for making people aware of your product, but when it comes to actual ROI, there's none there. So you don't want to build your business model on being an influencer on that alone, because that alone is depending on someone else's budget. Like, you want to have something that's unique to you. So I like what you're talking, like, it's not just going to be that. And the affiliate links can be interesting too. There's a lot of blogs that make 6 figures a month running affiliate links, and if people don't know what we're talking about with that, an affiliate link is like, you go on Amazon, you become a affiliate account on their website, and you can actually get special links that are unique to you to sell products. So if you click on that product and someone buys that product or any product within 24 hours, you get a certain cut of that sale. And now it's small. It's usually between, depending on what it is, I think it's like 4 and 12% on Amazon. But if you have a blog that's doing, millions of unique impressions, then you can really drive up, a good amount of income from that. So I think you're thinking about it from all the right ways. At this point, my recommendation would just be like, sit down and write it out, man. Like, you got to go through that exercise at some point.
Yeah, and it's funny because I started out and I do have a business plan written out, but it's got a lot of gaps. And I had actually met with a business consultant. There's a program here in northern Pennsylvania that runs through what they call the Pennsylvania Wilds, and it's all about this rural, area and this beautiful area that we have, but they really support people that start up small businesses there. And the Clarion University in Pennsylvania runs this small business center that it's a free resource that they'll meet with you, their marketing specialists and some other people there, and help you, create the business plan and give you some feedback and some different things like that. And for me, I had no background in anything that when it came to, starting a business or figuring this out. I've had a million ideas in my head, but didn't know how to make anything a reality. So that's been really helpful. But what I think and what you're saying to me is, really kind of get that set and revisit it, look at it and see, a lot has changed since, 7 months ago when I wrote that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of things. And that is something that, I need to align with. Sometimes I'm so worried about just rolling with things and trying to, create the content, put it out there and stuff, sometimes you need to just kind of reset and go back and look at, are you on track with what you're planning on doing? Are you going down a course you shouldn't be? What is that? I've always, my biggest personal struggle is when to say no to things, and what aligns with my goals and what I'm trying to do. Am I taking on things just to gain a couple extra bucks? Maybe it's writing for this avenue or doing this, but is that really helping me, or is it just spending more time in a place that I shouldn't?
Right, man. Time management's key. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm trying to be more diligent about what I say yes to, and trying to say no more often. And that sucks that I have to do that. Things that I certainly would have said yes to even 3 months ago or 6 months ago, I'm gonna have to start turning some stuff down, just because as you get more reach or traction, or you meet more people, like there's always gonna be just the law of averages alone. You're going to have more people that want meetings, or they want to talk about what they could do for you or their services. And the more you can figure those things out, the red flags early, cutting off it could be an entire a job role. Like on LinkedIn, for example, one of mine is freaking recruiters and tech companies that develop apps. I get hit up with that crap so much because I'm listed as a co-founder of a tech company on LinkedIn. And it's like I used to always reply, like when I was still working full time and I had another job listing, it wasn't as much. I get like one a month, and I would respond and be polite, and because I always tried to at least be honest, like, hey, we just don't need that right now, like blah blah blah. It's gotten to the point where it's like I'm not even responding, and I would have at one point in my life thought that was rude, like to not answer an email. But the more I'm realizing, it's like I didn't solicit this service. They're blanketing probably 50 other people today, if not more, and they aren't going to remember if I responded or not. And like at the end of the day, they didn't make any effort to build a relationship with me first. It's like coming out of the gates blazing, like, hey, let me earn your money. And to me, that's not how good business is done. So I've like pretty much shut off entirely those two job titles.
No, that's a good point. And the one thing that I'm sure you've kind of went across this too, but I've struggled with people, sending me messages that telling me, why I should have them on my podcast. And some of them, I can't even believe the messages they send.
Oh yeah, man.
It's like,
I can believe this.
Hey, I'm reaching out to a bunch of podcasts, just got back from this hunt. Like, I was successful. I did this. I'm just wondering when you can get me on your schedule for a podcast. I'm like, hold on a second here.
Yeah.
Like, let's relax. Let's step back.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people advocating to put me on the podcast, and like first rule of podcast is that's typically not a good place to start. Of like you advocating for yourself, like you don't have usually if there's an avocation like that that's sensible, it's coming from like someone's people, like they've done something to where like they have a team that's advocating that. I have very rarely done this, but like occasionally said like, hey, we should do a podcast and talk about, and but typically I don't approach it from that. It's like I hope to be asked to be on someone's show, but I'm not gonna like go out and solicit that. But I've had people too, man, like you would believe, because you're getting hit up with the same kind of stuff. People wouldn't believe, like just the amount of like really weird people that come out of the woodwork when you have a podcast.
Yeah, and yeah, it's absolutely crazy to me. Like I can't even believe some of the stuff, and I'm not saying that like, there's some people that have reached out that ended up being guests, but they were really, it depends on how you go about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And not just, showing what I can do for them.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And that's, there's like I said, I don't want to sound like a negative.
Well, you and I kind of went that way. I don't even remember. I think I solicited you, but it was not like a. I don't even remember if we figured out who was going to be on whose show. I was like, hey, we should do a podcast. Like, and because I was a fan of what you were doing. Like, there was a common, like, we had a more relationship. Like, there was a foundational relationship. We met in person. Like, there was, it came about it from the personal angle. I think I reached out to you first, didn't I?
Yeah, you. Actually, I mean, I had reached out to you a long time ago. or I don't know, it wasn't a long time ago, but it felt like it when you and Cody Rich did a pod. That's how I found your stuff, and then I'd messaged, or I'd posted it on my story or something about the podcast, and then maybe you messaged me and said thanks, for that from the Go Wild account, and I wrote back, said I liked what you were doing, and that was kind of that. And from there, then right before ATA show, I was on an email list that you were on, and then that's when you reached out to me. I was like, hey, I'd love to, meet up with you. I like what you're doing, and you invited me to the party that Go Wild had there with Garmin, and I wasn't able to attend that, but you and I met up at the show the next day and kind of hit it off from that side of things, and we should record a show, and I was like, all right, well, you want to be on mine, and you kind of said the same, so it worked out from that side of things, and that's a good way of going about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the fact that I couldn't even remember. Well, actually, I guess that speaks as much to my memory as the process. But like making that personal introduction goes so much further than just coming in hard and fast with the sales pitch, man. Like I can't believe the amount of people that think that's the way to approach anything. My favorite example of that, of how to do that poorly, is the amount of people that hit us up for sponsorships, and they lead in. Some of these people just lead in with an email that says, hey, will you sponsor me? There's no link to a YouTube page. There's nothing. And that's like your borderline probably teenage kids. And that's like cool. I was young and dumb once too, and probably would have done something like that. And then elevate that to like an adult who will try to sell us like just super hard sell. And you can almost tell that this is a blanket. Like if I can tell this is a blanket email that you're sending to everybody else, there's zero chance I'm responding. If I think you've at least taken the time to customize it, I will usually respond and decline. To be courteous to people. Like they have an admiration for what we're doing. I want to be nice to them. But yeah, the never leading in with the hard sell is never the way to go about that. I actually have a really good show with John Hunter, my second or my first show I ever did. It's number 2 on the series, or on Restless Native. John talks about the right way to get sponsored if people are into that kind of thing. Again, a lot. I don't even know if people really want to be sponsored if they really knew what all that entailed.
Yeah.
Like you don't just post about stuff and there's no accountability. Like brands want to know how many links you drove or like clicks you drove. They want to know what they're selling. They're going to want to know impression counts. You better be hitting every point of your contract that says all these things you have to do. Like it's a lot of freaking work and it's a lot of stress if you are running a lot of these. But John breaks down how to approach brands to get in that discussion and to warm up the sell, and how to pitch yourself and what kind of metrics they're looking for. You might like it, Bo. It was my it's probably terrible. I haven't listened to it since then. It was literally my first show with a guest, and we weren't even in a studio or anything. We went to his dad's construction company and recorded up in a conference room. But he has some really great advice, and John's a smart guy. I mean, he's got a degree in business, and he has these anglers have some serious clients. John's got some pretty fat clients on his boat, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna definitely check that one out. That's another thing that I'm seeing with the podcast growing and some other things. I'd like to be able to add, and I have added a couple partnerships, but I'm like I was saying earlier, I'm really weary on that, and I have just a few in mind, that I want to work with, and how do you go and you pitch these ideas to these people? I'm not good at that side of it. I don't like asking for things. I like to show people of it and hope that that they come to you with opportunities, and sometimes that works that way, but it doesn't all the time. If you're giving someone free content and everything, why are they going to just come at you and offer you money or this or that, so
yeah, well,
it's a really interesting thing.
And they're not going to point out the fact that they're not paying you. Like they're going to keep taking what you're giving them. I mean, I'm on this from both sides now, like trying to earn advertisers with the Go Wild, and also on the people who are trying to earn our business. We sponsor a few people too. So I can totally relate to both sides, but I think more than anything, man, like enthusiasm and being genuine wins me over more than almost anything. Like we work with some people that have a much smaller reach than what we could pay, we have a holistic budget for influencers, and we could take that whole budget and get a much bigger person. But it's important to me that we like who we're working with, because I don't want to have somebody, if it feels like it was painful for you to promote our product, then I don't want to work with you. Like people that are genuinely excited about it, I actually have approached them and saying, hey, I've seen you promoting us, and like I like what you're doing. I'd like to expand upon that in this way, and then they get to price it and tell us what they think it's worth. It's a different conversation,
Yeah, no, definitely. And so the one thing that I was really excited about was recently I had partnered with Corey Jacobson and his University of Elk Hunting, which is an online course for helping people to, well, as it says, elk hunt. And I have purchased this year-long membership 3 years in a row now, and have just talked about it on my podcast and how great it's been, because it truly has been to me. And then recently he reached out to me and was like, hey, do you have any opportunities for advertising through your podcast? Like I really like, your genuine attitude about it. You've never come and asked me for anything. You're just doing this because you really believe in it. And those type of partnerships and stuff, I mean, that's just ideal. It doesn't always happen, that easily, but that was pretty cool to be able to see that happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And then there's the flip of things. Like sometimes I promote things I just truly love. Like I would almost guarantee that my followers on anything think that Casey over at Tacticalories is paying me, and I don't make a dime from anything with Casey. We've even got a go out discount for people to get free shipping over at Tacticalories, and I don't even know. I think Casey sent me one free package. He gave me some seasoning once for free, just to try it out, because he knew I cooked a lot, and I had his wild game seasoning. I think he sent me a packet of that for free, or like a couple packs of that to test out, and only after I had promoted the hell out of this stuff. I mean, it's still promoted all the time, and it's because I want people to know about a product that I'm excited about. It's totally different. I have actually said this too. Like if Casey called me up tomorrow and was like, "Hey man, I just got a new investor. We've got a $40,000 a year marketing budget for influencers alone, and I want to give you $1,000 a month." I'd be like, "Man, thanks, but no thanks." Like truly, I would turn it. Like I don't want to do that. And not that I'm not an influencer personally. Like I have 1,500 followers on Instagram. I'm in no way an influencer. But if he did offer that, I would not want it, because then all of a sudden it's like it's work. Like I love posting about Tacticalories because it has really. It's made cook. I love to cook, and I love to make like crazy stuff. But some nights you just need a quick and dirty thing that's good. And Montreal steak seasoning for me doesn't get it done. Casey actually has a funny joke. It's like, what does Montreal taste like? And, so he's got like all these crazy flavors. Like last night, it was one of those rush nights, and I didn't have time to make a big fancy dinner. So. Or I didn't even have any game or anything out of my freezer thawed out, so I just stopped and grabbed some chicken wings on the way home. Throw on his chipotle lime seasoning, boom, like instant fantastic dinner that I did in 20-30 minutes. And I posted about it, and it's like I love that product. But the minute he started paying me, it'd be a job, and I wouldn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, that's funny. And like you said, it is a lot more work than if someone that hasn't dabbled in it. It's different than as you see across these companies offer field staff and pro staffs where you get 15% off a product, a sticker for your vehicle, and and then you post about it on social media. Like with an influencer or an ambassador type program, there's real responsibilities that go with it. And it takes a lot of time, and you really have to drive sales for them to make it worthwhile. But at the same time, you got to make sure you're doing it in a way that a tasteful way, because like you said, you don't want to be one of them people that's just constantly promoting things. You lose the value in it, and your listeners or your followers or whatever they may be just drop off because of it. I know I've lost, not respect for the person, but for their views on things as they've, grown and taken a different route with it. And don't get me wrong, I understand that, if they're making a living doing it and stuff, there's a balance there, but sometimes people just take it too far.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I'm curious, who's your like ultimate guest that you could get to for your podcast?
Huh. Like my dream guest to get on the podcast?
Yeah, any budget, time constraints put aside, like who would you love to get on the show?
So it's probably one that just about anybody would want on, but I think I would love to sit down with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that guy would just be a blast to sit down and talk to about things. And so it's just not, he is a hunter, but he's just so knowledgeable in a lot of different things that I think I could learn a lot from him there and probably get high on secondhand smoke. But either way, it's I think it would be really cool to get to talk to Joe. But other than that, like, I really haven't thought of that one guest that I want to have on as a dream goal,
Yeah. Rogan would be one that would totally come in and dominate your interview too. Like, you would not be interviewing him. Like, he's just
no.
He's been doing this longer than anybody in the game, and he's got, he's gonna totally own that conversation. I'm pretty sure on Steve Rinella, is it Steve Rinella's? Is he the first guest on that? I know he was the first on Cam Haines' shortly lived podcast, and he totally dominated that.
Yeah.
He's just gonna do that. I'm also curious, like, who's your sleeper guest of everybody you've had on of the unknowns? Like, who's the one that if people go and listen to one show of yours, who should it be?
So if you're into whitetail hunting, the one with Johnny Stewart that I released, he's the one I was telling you about earlier. I just released it in January. He's a local Southwest Pennsylvania guy, and Johnny is just has so much knowledge and in a way that you've never heard anybody talk about whitetail hunting. Like, his thought process makes you think that he's absolutely insane, but the guy is extremely successful. And when you sit down and think of his illogical way of thinking about it, it makes sense. And he's taught me so much over the years of getting to know him, and I'm getting so much feedback on that, being like, you need to have him back on. Like, I never thought of it from this standpoint, but that guy, Johnny Stewart, was the one that I would recommend anyone listen to that hasn't heard of it.
All right, looks like it's episode 46, Public Land Whitetail Tactics with Johnny Stewart.
That would be it. And like I said, it's topic based, and we jump around a lot, but it was one that I definitely recommend from that standpoint.
Dude.
And there's one other one I do want to recommend from someone that's on the other side of it with, like, the adventure hunting and also looking at, budgeting and some other different lessons with it. And it's episode 002. It's called Adventure Hunting with Matt Comment. And Matt is someone that I met. Actually, I heard on a podcast. He's still, not a relatively big name. He doesn't want to be, but he's a very accomplished hunter. He's from Pennsylvania originally. I just reached out to him because I saw he was from Pennsylvania, and I heard him on a podcast, and we ended up meeting up and at the Total Archery Challenge a few years ago before I even started the podcast, and he's taught me a lot. And that podcast specifically really dives into how a normal guy that works a full-time job, isn't rich by any means, is able to do some absolute dream hunts that you would think that, that he's, a celebrity, for lack of better terms, for the hunts he gets to go on.
That's awesome, man.
And it's all coming down to budgeting and his way of, aligning goals. He's made me feel bad about some of my purchases. When I bought a truck last year that it was used, but it was a newer truck, and he sent me a text message that said, "You're driving your sheep hunt," and I just started laughing. But
yeah,
that one's a really one that I think people could get a lot out of.
Awesome.
Yeah,
cool, man. What have I not asked you about that you wanted to hit on this show?
Oh man, I think you really dove into a lot of stuff there. I don't think really anything else, just other than the podcast. I'm really, hoping to continue just to put out, good content and looking for some more different writing avenues and have some things in the works there. So I'm really excited for 2019. So let's put it that way.
Oh, you know what? I'll recommend a show of yours. I liked your one with Allie and Nick. And Marta. I just thought it was fun. I don't know. I had just met Allie at ATA, and I just met you at ATA, and I'm like, they're together on this show. I'm gonna listen to it. So I thought, and I met Nick too. I didn't mean to exclude him on the meet. They were kind of cruising around. They were doing content for ATA, and she popped over for a bit and said, hey. But I thought that was a fun show. She's a great interview. I'd love to get her on we've been trying to schedule a podcast for weeks now, but she's been caught up with her brand, and it was during trade show season too, so she's kind of been moving around. So maybe I'll get her soon.
Yeah, you definitely have to get her on. I mean, she is that whole group dynamic that we had there. Not that it surprised me, but I had never met them before. I knew, so I had some mutual friends that were friends with, Nick and I had mutual friends, so I knew of him, and Allie, obviously, she is definitely considered an influencer in the outdoor space, and they were just super down-to-earth people and great to talk with, and like you said, that was one of my favorite conversations. I felt like it flowed together really well.
Yeah, it was great. It's a fun show. Yeah, I mean, it's like a hunt camp chat. That's what anytime, you have just natural conversation flow and storytelling and whatnot. I wanted to get into some stories with you, but I picked the day. So I've been doing like some weird health, not weird. I've been shaking up my health routine over the last year, trying to get healthier, trying to get my into a diet that like fits me and feels good, that I don't feel like death after I eat things. Like I've always had that like explosive death feeling. Like you either feel like super sluggish or like my food is not fueling me. It's actually like making me feel worse. So I started doing paleo. I stopped doing paleo and doing like primal where there's some dairy, yada, yada. And then through all of learning about paleo, there's a lot of talk about people that eat paleo tend to really want to mimic like the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, which I think you can take to too far of an extreme, but something that's been interesting to me, and Rogan talks about this a lot too, especially if you've listened to like his episodes with Chris Kresser, who I think is an incredibly smart guy on nutrition. They talk about the value of like intermittent fasting, and without doing like any of my own research, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this week. And so I started that. I haven't eaten since dinner last night. And yeah, so it's actually not been bad. Like it's not been bad, but I was actually hungrier this morning at breakfast time. But I'm now like starting to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I need some food. I need to like actually eat something. And I could drag this show out for like another hour. Like it's been fun chatting with you, but I'm also to the point where I know I need to put some fuel in my brain.
Well, I am going to add a comment to what you just said there about the intermittent fasting. So I am a morning eating machine. Like I eat between 3 to 4 eggs and bacon every single day.
Heck yeah.
And that's like my thing. And well, my cousin keeps telling me about intermittent fasting, and and I was having some issues with feeling sluggish and everything, and I know already that I don't do well with wheat and some other different things that from what the doctors have told me that I shouldn't be eating that. But anyways, my diet's been pretty good, but I eat a lot in the mornings. I'm always hungry, and he's like, you got to try intermittent fasting. Well, the problem with me doing it is I work out every morning between 4:30 and 5 in the morning. So after doing that, I need food. I tried it for 2 days. I'd get to like 10 in the morning, and I felt so sick because I just needed food. And I think if you're going to be, working out in the morning, maybe you need to shift that fasting schedule. I don't know. I'm not an expert on it.
I'm not either.
I haven't figured it out.
I'm not either. I've read a little bit about it, and it doesn't seem I know there's like it does work in the morning for some people, but you can also do like breakfast to dinner. one thing that Rogan said on he was talking about Henry Rollins. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was on Rogan and he was talking about doing it. And he's like, I just kind of naturally do it. He's like, I don't know who invented the idea of lunch. Like, why do we think we need to have 3 meals a day? And he was talking about how he's had incredible, like he feels great when he eats less. And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is like, Kresser says to eat like on smaller plates, but also to eat 80 when you're 80% full to stop. And, kind of keeping that in mind and like what I'm eating. And I also think I have some type of wheat allergy. I haven't been to the doctor thought it was dairy, but I've figured out that like I can have certain dairy. So I feel great. I mean, there was a guy on Go Wild the other day who I posted some pancakes and they were paleo pancakes because but he commented. I didn't say that they were. I'm not like flaunting it all the time. I just posted like a breakfast picture of some eggs and paleo pancakes and just said something about how good it was. And he said, "How do you not weigh 300 pounds?" Because I do cook and like post about food all the freaking time, and it's like it looks like it's really. Some of it you would think is super unhealthy, but I said, actually, man, I've been losing weight. I lost like 18 pounds when I started eating paleo, and he's like, how do you make pancakes that are paleo? I said, they're made with coconut flour, and he's like, all right, dude, now you just sound like a chick. And I'm like, hey, man, if that's like if feeling as good as I do now compared to like when I don't eat this diet. I'll take being if like being a female is the best insult you got for me, I'll take it all day long because it's like, I mean, it's really like the stomach issues that I can get out of wheat sometimes. It's just it's not worth it. Like there's no amount of burgers or whatever you want to throw at me that's worth it. Maybe if I'm traveling and it's like, holy crap, this is supposed to be the best Nashville hot chicken you can get. I'm like, okay. That might be worth it for like a one-time thing there, but like to just randomly go out here in Louisville and get a burger, like I'm not going to do that anymore. It's not worth it for me.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I went 3 years without eating any gluten, any dairy because the doctor said like they told me I had like 20 some different food allergies.
Oh, jeez.
And yeah, and what I ended up finding a lot of it to be dealt with was I have Lyme's disease as well.
Oh, jeez.
From a tick, and yeah, not to make that doom and gloom, but I'm fine. And I just couldn't do that any longer, 100% that way. So I still eat very clean, and for the most part, but I need cheat things here and there. I need to be able to have a regular beer if I want it, or if I want a burger, I do it and put up with the struggles here and there. But I know if I'm doing something important and if I need to use my brain, I need to be eating clean.
Dude, so I just texted you a website that I've been checking out. I've been using this lady's site for about 6 months now, paleomg.com, and she's got some fantastic recipes for burgers. She has like there's some gluten-free, wheat-free buns you can make, and she'll sometimes put them on biscuits. You can also, she has some sliders that she'll make, like cut a sweet potato, like a nice 1/2 inch cut of a sweet potato, and use that as your bun base, so it's like an open face burger. She's got all kinds of solutions for eating paleo, but also super delicious. Some of the best recipes I've ever made, actually most of like what I would qualify as best recipes ever made, have come from her site. I mean, it's just incredible food. Check it out. All of them work with wild game. I mean, I've been doing most of these with venison. It's just a phenomenal website, paleomg.com, for anybody that's looking. You're going to look at this website, and you're going to be like, Brad's totally a chick, and you know what? Don't care.
That's fine. Hey, if you feel better, it doesn't matter.
That's right,
That's
man.
The way I used to be embarrassed about it, and anymore I'm like, I don't care. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of people, like Ranella keeps joking that he's like, I don't know, man, it seems like a lot of liberals that have gluten intolerance, and I totally was that guy. I totally thought it was made up. I didn't think gluten was a real thing. I'm like, it doesn't have. I actually used to say that I have an iron stomach. Like I thought I could eat anything, but until you stop eating anything, you don't know how bad like your system is actually malfunctioning. So,
yeah, people
are probably tired of hearing this. This comes up quite a bit on my podcasts since I've been doing this. But I mean, I'm an evangelist for it because I believe in it. And I was hanging out in Houston Safari Club, and one of the guys was telling me that he's been having issues, and I'm like, come here, man, let me show you this website and tell you what's worked for me. Like, I don't know that it'll work for everybody, but if it makes anybody feel better, one person feeling better, after how bad I would feel sometimes, it will make you will get like 20% more energy if you have the issues, these wheat issues. If and some people don't. My wife cannot tell a difference between when we eat paleo and when we don't. Some people are more resistant to it, but if you're having that issue and you stop and clean, like you said, clean out your diet, holy crap, what a difference it makes.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree, and whatever it takes to feel better, I'm willing to do it, once you feel that sluggish feeling. And some people don't even realize that they have any issues with it because they're just used to feeling that way.
Yep.
But
for sure, man.
But anyways, Brad, I'll let you go now since I drug on the end of the conversation.
Oh, no, it's fine.
But
I didn't have to drop in that I hadn't eaten anything today, but I kind of took us there. So, and then once we started talking paleo and cooking, it's like something I'm really passionate about. So, all right, man. Well, thanks for hopping on. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah, it has been. Brad, you take care.
All right, take care, Bo. All right, thank you, Bo, for taking some time. Bo's still working full-time, so he's running around trying to get ready for shows, doing it in his off hours. So we recorded this in the evening, as you can tell by the end of the show there. Great guy, though. Happy to meet Bo at ATA. Happy to stay in touch with this guy. And fun fact, I am going to be joining Bo on his podcast soon, so I'll let you guys know when that's there. It'll be fun, just like the Cody Rich interview. You've heard me interviewed by him, and then me interview Cody, which actually somehow with Cody still ends up with him interviewing me. That's what he does to every podcast that I've heard him on. I would like to hear him have a podcast off with Joe Rogan, but Bo. He and I kind of met up at ATA, and it's like, hey, who should be on whose podcast? I don't know. Let's just both do it. So glad I got to go first. That's always fun to get things started. We'll kick it off. I thought Bo did great. I'm looking forward to joining him soon. All right, I want to remind you about that turkey hunt. If you didn't already sign up for the NWTF sweepstakes, you got to do that now. I don't know why you wouldn't. If you're a member, membership is it's really cheap. $35, and it goes towards conservation. And soon you'll hear on my show about how that $35 gets put to work. But just trust me, you definitely want to get in on the sweepstakes. We're talking about a free turkey hunt that you could win here. You and a buddy are going to Wisconsin on Go Wild's dime. The NWTF is involved here. They're sponsoring this event. And, go up, chase birds. I think you're even going to get to do some fishing. It's a guided hunt. All the gear is provided. You're going to win some gear. So just do it. Just sign up, get involved. As always, if you haven't left a review for Restless NATO, we certainly appreciate that. Please tell a friend or 5. And if you have any feedback of things you don't like about the show, I'm always listening. So you know where to find me. Message me on Go Wild. All right, that's it for today. I'm out.